Good afternoon, Dave. How are you?
Doing pretty good. How are you doing today, Brian?
Another week in the books.
Yep.
The week in the books. I think it may just be you and I today. We'll see if anyone else joins. We'll add them. Thanks to anyone that's watching. We are the Reboot Wednesdays, 1:30 Eastern time, and kind of discuss a myriad of topics that affect small businesses. Today we're going to talk about. It sounds kind of broad, but I do have some specifics that we can get into. Common IT problems in small businesses, and kind of give you some guidance and recommendations in their landscaping outside. So I may have to mute myself from time to time. I am Brian Bradshaw with B&LTC Solutions, based out of Long Island, New York.
I'm David Luft with LDD Consulting out of Albuquerque, New Mexico.
Isn't that the chili capital of the world?
The green chili capital.
There we go.
It's not Alaska chili.
Mute for a second.
As we're going to be talking about certain issues that companies may have, and one thing that we've run into recently is really having a disaster recovery plan is huge. We had a local medical practice here in town that a semi ran into their power, and they've been out for 2 days completely. And they have other practices in town, or another office in town, where they could potentially send their clients to, but without a plan ahead of time, it could be an issue. And we had somebody steal our copper a couple of weeks ago, and we had no power for a couple of days. And I actually took our servers and put them at my house and got things going. But these plans are really important, so you're not figuring them out at that time.
Yeah. Seriously? Anyway, so one of the things to keep in mind, along with that business continuity, disaster, recovery, BCP, whatever you call it, is now that hybrid environment is somewhat being standardized across some firms. There can be a misunderstanding or misalignment of where some of the data now lives. So you may have had a policy in place, we're backing up servers, these volumes, or now maybe there was a pivot to SharePoint or OneDrive, or now people are saving stuff locally, even though you may tell them not to, but you have this kind of data, this kind of distributed across different platforms, and you may not be capturing or backing up that data. And the assumption, let's be honest, to the business owner, the end user, is you got everything, right? So just make sure that you do have that, and you're following best practices for any types of changes, and you have change management procedure in place. Mm-hmm. You're going to follow along that and make those changes accordingly. One of the things on my list was, we had business continuity on there, compliance requirements, right? So you may, and I've had conversations with companies, business owners that I know need to have certain compliance requirements in place. And it can be an overwhelming task project to implement them, and it can take 6 months to implement. But you have to, like, if you require NIST compliance, if you're doing any work for the government, if you require if the FTC safeguards rule, we're talking directly with people and putting these plans in place. But simply saying it's too overwhelming or just abstaining from it is not going to get the job done. It has to be, you have to partner with somebody and bite the bullet and make sure that you're maintaining your compliance. I mean, that's critical. You're talking about fines, and David, I don't even know what else goes along with that, but that's a big one.
And the fines are going to be the biggest part.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you don't do it, you're just opening yourself up for potential breaches, which is going crazy nowadays. So the fines are probably a smaller part of the whole cost of stuff.
Yeah. And that kind of, to piggyback off of that, we could talk about cybersecurity insurance, because to get cybersecurity insurance, if you're not compliant, you're not going to get the insurance, right? And there's these questionnaires, we go through them with our own clients, and some of them we tell them that you don't meet the requirements that they're asking for. We need to put whether it be controls, applications, procedures, whatever it is, in place in order to check those boxes so that you can get that insurance. Because we're seeing denied coverage all over the place. So
Yes.
those two kind of can work hand in hand.
And you'll actually save money by spending money being more secure
Yep. Yep.
on your potential insurance.
Yep.
So
One of the other things that I think some of the other common issues, we kind of just touched on it a little bit, but you may have you may be using Salesforce or Infusionsoft or a CRM system, and you're using Monday.com for project management or another project management software, and you're using Slack for internal communication, and you're using 365, and then it's not uncommon to see this. They call it data sprawling when you have data all over the place without having. And I think this is a frustration for some businesses when you discuss their current technology pain points and try to establish a roadmap, but having this data just kind of all over the place and not knowing is it here, is it in both, which one is right. So when you're as you start and it progressively gets worse. We've seen it with contractors where they're using a half dozen different programs with zero integration, and where we can help or your provider can help is to look and find a way, number one, to pick applications, these SaaS applications, software as a service, cloud hosted stuff that can handle integrations with other products. For us, my ticketing system and my our remote access, our warranty, that all in our documentation, they all talk to each other. So we add a new client into our PSA, that gets seen across the board. So there's no data deduplication or anything like that. Everything just kind of syncs across each platform and makes it easy. And that's something for small businesses. I think that where you can reach out and ask for some help is establishing, trying to get some, whether there's through an API or some kind of integration into your applications. Hold on one sec.
yeah, no, that's definitely an important thing because it'll make your data more consistent and it actually saves you a lot of time, and people make mistakes when they're having to duplicate things for sure.
Yeah. And I'm going to segue that into, and I'm going to call this an IT problem in small business, only because there's maybe some procedures missing here. But if there's no proper client onboarding and or offboarding, when you have this data sprawling, all these different data sources that you're using without a checklist or some formal offboarding, let's say someone does something that could be detrimental to the business, they get fired, whatever it is, you need to make sure that you can properly remove access to all these platforms. And if you don't have a checklist or a guide to help you get through that, your risk and vulnerability goes up, because now you may not have closed an open door into your company. So that's where we help too. We do that internally for when a client has a new hire, we send them our onboarding link, even though we're not onboarding a new client, we're onboarding a new user. But we have an onboarding checklist that we send them. They fill it all out for us, and then when we get the asset that they need, or if they're reusing an existing, then we have our own internal checklist for each client. This is the steps that need to be followed to properly onboard this new user. And it's without that we couldn't do our job, or we could do our job, but not very effectively because there's changes. Yeah.
The other thing that's really good about those checklists is that when somebody leaves, you can save money by reducing your licenses. And if you don't tell your provider and you hire new people, you're buying new licenses. But if you didn't tell them somebody left, you're throwing money out the door.
Yep. So another thing is technology planning and road mapping. It's hard. We get it. Everyone's busy. We're dealing with the SMBs, and sitting down with your provider and going over, here's where you are now. Here's what you're paying for. The last 3 meetings I've gone on, they sat down and looked and said, well, this user hasn't been here in 6 months. This computer has been offline for 9 months. And they're finding these things. I said, well, you have to tell us this. Like, so to your point, David, you're just wasting money paying for something we don't know if you don't tell us, we have no idea that that user doesn't work for you anymore,
Mhm.
right? So and our procedures are properly documented and explain what you should do when someone and you can only lead a horse to water. You can't, right? I mean, it's not. So be diligent about your onboarding and offboarding, and ultimately, every client I met with is now saving money because of a simple conversation we had.
Mhm. And especially during COVID, when people started working from home, and some people did, you didn't know which computers were actually in use and which weren't, and if
Yep,
they got rid of them, and we found out we were maintaining computers that didn't need to be maintained.
it's crazy. Um,
So
so
it's critical to save money.
it is. I mean, and now some of the other frustrations, which we're still seeing today, and it all stemmed from COVID, but we're seeing people that have more and more remote access that want certain to be able to do certain things as if they were in the office. And you have to understand that they're if they're not in the office and they're want to remote in, then you have to have controls in place to not only. I mean, ultimately, you need to protect your company because
Mhm.
we allow people to remote to endpoints. They have to go through our portal, two-factor authentication. They can connect to one or as many endpoints as the business allows. Along with that, though, you have to realize we don't allow any transfer between the host and the remote. And I've had clients say to me, we desperately need to use that. You can't turn that off. And I will not turn that ability off. If you have a employee owned asset that we manage, then we'll set up a VPN and you can work that way. That's your workaround. But
Mhm.
for these rogue devices that are unmanaged, you can't. I mean, you open up that communication between the two computers where you can move stuff back and forth. That goes right into your network. If there's anything on that computer that you've just allowed it full access to go into your network as you and do some damage.
Mhm.
So
I heard
COVID.
I was in a compliance meeting yesterday, and I heard a very interesting thing that people are actually taking cell phones, shipping them to companies, and they'll sit there in a box and they can check out all the Wi-Fi, and they could potentially, if you have weak security, get in with that cell phone that they shipped you from Amazon.
Oh, so it's on.
Yeah.
Wow.
Or sorry, they didn't ship it from Amazon. That's bad because that would have been a purchase, but they ship it to
Right.
you, and it just
And
sits
they
there, and it's on your network. And if you have weak security, they
that's
potentially
crazy.
could get information about your network or potentially get on it.
Yep. It's just like it's then they could become that man in the middle or do whatever.
Mhm.
Probably a myriad of things that they can do.
Yeah.
Um, that's crazy though. I mean, it doesn't surprise me, right?
No, it's just very interesting what's going on nowadays.
Yeah. Um,
We had
another.
another one happen
Mhm.
where I may have mentioned this last week. I'm not sure, but a company had called. They looked on the back of their credit card, followed that process to get the phone number, called in, and then about just a minute after they had hung up with that, the company called them back and remoted into their computer. It turned out it wasn't the company. What I heard though was that in call centers, people in the call centers are then calling their friends and giving them the information, and then their friends call back right away and say, "Hey, we were just talking with you on the phone." So I'm getting to the point where I'm going to tell my customers, if we call in and want to remote in, you need to call us back and make sure it's
Wow.
us.
Yeah. That's crazy. I mean, that really is not surprising, but it's another. I've seen some of the stuff that Kevin Mitnick does, and looking at. Just want to say how easy it is to just do that. And
No.
there were emails that go out. It looks like it's from your local bank, whatever bank you use, your local regional bank, whatever it is. It looks like it comes from them and says that there's a problem with your account. It has their logo on it. It has a phone number on it. You think it's their phone number, and you dial that number. You're calling the scammer. They're patching you through, unbeknownst to you, to your real bank, and they're sitting in the middle listening to you enter your account number, listening to you enter your PIN. They've just captured everything, and again, from a phishing email. So it still comes back to training. And another common IT problem in business is people, educating the people, training the people.
Mhm.
And there's so many, prospects that I talk to that just have nothing in place. And the only way that you can prevent that is to provide that training, that awareness, and you're going to improve the overall, um, just the mentality in the company once you start going through these training exercises. And it's repetitive. It's not like it's not a one and done. There should be in-person training at least once a year. There should be monthly phishing campaigns. They should be topical. It should be things that you want to, pull at those heartstrings and try to get a reaction out of it. But you have to, this is part of the training. A lot of places don't do that. And you can complain all you want about people doing stupid things. Well, you have to train. It's just behavioral. You have to work on the training, put the procedures in place, and try to minimize that risk. Again, and we've talked about that before. We had a session just on the security awareness training.
Yeah. And I think the biggest piece of that is not the annual training, because who remembers what they did 8 months ago?
Right.
That you really need that weekly little piece to keep it at the front of your head.
Right. One of the other things on my list was just an overall lack of IT strategy. You need to meet with your IT company at least once a year just to discuss, because there could be hardware refreshes, there could be business changes, there could be an acquisition going on, there could be downsizing, whatever it is. We have to plan properly. We're not going to plan for that next year. We want to discuss if there's potential growth in the company. Be prepared for that growth from an infrastructure standpoint, from a bandwidth standpoint. Make sure, if you told us that we're bringing on another 300 people, your IT company may not be able to support that. So having that conversation and just making sure that your longer term goals of the company are aligned with your IT strategy. You can't forget about that. I had a meeting 3 months ago with a client, and they are in the middle of buying another building. And I would not have known that had I not sat with them and kind of discussed what's on their roadmap. That's going to involve us in some capacity from a cabling. We may do wireless connectivity to the building, setting up the infrastructure there, getting the hardware required. It's a whole list of stuff. So have an IT strategy once a year. And you can have an hour meeting. If you want it to be quick, do it in a half hour. Discuss the strategy of the company, where you are today, where you're going to be. Review all your licenses. And we do asset management. You do that as well, and tell them, what, these computers are. We got people that computers are 8, 9, 10 years old. It has to go. Has to be replaced. It's now impeding the performance of the employees. So your productivity is actually going down because of it can't support the current infrastructure or demand that the job calls for today. Have that and say, what, let's phase it out. Let's do 5 computers a quarter, whatever it is, whatever that number is. But have that meeting and make sure you do a hardware refresh and everything's aligned.
Yes. And if you look at what a computer costs over 5 to 8 years versus what you're paying employees, it's silly not to upgrade and keep the equipment fast, because you're going to save that money easily
Mm-hmm.
in productivity, like you mentioned.
Yeah. Another thing is, what was I thinking? There was I've a lot of our calls now are from companies that don't like their response time for their current IT company. They've learned to live with it, and until you have that conversation, so we try to steer our marketing towards response times and SLAs and stuff like that. But a big frustration if you have employees, and again, identifying the severity of a ticket is, if someone can't print to their printer, but they can print to another printer. I mean, you have to be able to explain to the client that that's not going to, we're not going to jump on that immediately and have somebody on site to address that or whatever,
But if your server goes down, we're going to be there immediately.
Immediately, exactly.
So we have to, like you said, we have to prioritize these things.
Absolutely, and it's how many users are affected, how many applications are effective. What get a like an idea of the severity of the issue and go from there. I mean, we're pretty good. I mean, we toot our own horn for saying you call our office, you're getting a tech on the phone. And we're able to do that because of staffing and honestly, it's the tool sets that we have. We don't see as many of those issues that a less inferior or an inferior tool set may have in place. Maybe, if there's not, I mean, we go into places, the patching is a mess. Servers haven't been patched in anywhere from 6 months to 3 years, stuff like that. And it's just, so you go in there not knowing, well, you have, years worth of vulnerabilities that, you could be compromised right now. And that could be impeding the entire performance of the network. We use monitoring software so we can see the activity on a specific port. So if someone's, we're knowing that your network is slow, we're aware of that before you are. We see that bottleneck immediately. We get flagged. It opens up a ticket with us. So a lot of our stuff is that proactive work, and that's something that we push also. Is we're seeing these problems. We're seeing imminent, failures on hardware kind of before it happens. It's the biggest issues we have are when something gets rolled out, usually from a big company that we all have an operating system on. When they roll out something that breaks something, it happens to break everybody, then that's a problem, right? So we try to, sandbox our patching, but these are all things. You have frustrations with slowness. Well, why is it slow? I firsthand watched a prospect for 2 days trying to call their current provider, calling them, not going to call back. 2 days.
Wow.
Didn't even just wanted to speak to someone about an issue. Could not get a call back for 2 days. So yeah, that's unacceptable. But the business had been with them for years, and it was just, they accepted it. So you want to just be mindful and realize that there's other options out there, and a conversation. It's free to have a conversation, right? It's like a free consultation, and kind of see what's out there.
Yep.
What else did I have? Again, going back to what we talk about is the multi-factor. Talking about security again, we still are taking on clients that don't have that in place. It's the first thing we do, and it's not even an option. We enable for applications. The applications that support it, they're Microsoft 365, enabling that during our onboarding. That's when that happens, and it's amazing to see how many don't have it enabled, and that risk is just So if you want to minimize your risk, well, that's free. It's free to do, and you don't have it implemented. So someone's not doing either isn't overly concerned about your security, isn't monitoring your security, just doesn't care. Who knows what it is, but that's another big one. And we get people think that we don't need antivirus, we don't need this, we don't. I had someone tell me the other day, we're going to cancel everything. We have everything in the cloud now. And I'm like, well, yeah, but we're backing up the cloud. The cloud isn't backing up you. Just realize that and realize, well, so the computer, you're not going to go on the internet anymore with your computers. Well, no, we are. Well, then you're not going to have any protection from ransomware, malware, anything. Not understanding the fact that thinking, we went full cloud, we can now kind of get rid of some things. It's not the case.
So, and make sure you verify that the people that are hosting your stuff are actually backing it up, because they may just be providing it and you need to back it up.
Well, that's the case. And that's even people don't realize their email there is not backed up. It's in the cloud. It's Microsoft or Google G Suite, whatever it is. It's not backed up. It's redundant. I mean, if a cluster goes down, you're going to be rerouted, and there's resiliency in the infrastructure. But if you have corruption or something, you delete something gets deleted, whatever, you can't go back 30 days and retrieve mail. So we have that in place, and it's, I don't know, $3 or $4 a mailbox to back it up, and that backs up your OneDrive, your mailbox, your Teams, all that stuff. It's really a no brainer. Again, that's one of those things with new clients. We bundle that in there. We just it's kind of been the standard for the last 12 months for us.
Yep. If people don't have a server, we bundle in the backup of every workstation.
Yeah. That's a good one too. Yeah, we've been doing a lot of that. We've been rolling out the cloud and the continuity agents on the desktops. It's $20 a month a computer. It's nothing crazy, but you have that ability now to not only do a file restore, you can do a virtualization. If that computer crashes, and more importantly than the virtualization, you can get a replacement computer and just dump that image back down to the new one so that they picked up right where they left off.
Yep.
But the cloud virtualization, the computer crashes, we spin up that computer in the cloud. They can remote from anywhere to that computer through an open VPN connection and resume working while we, get new hardware. So the technology is crazy. It's just having these conversations with the business owners and trying to minimize those frustrations. And to your point, David, knowing, oh yeah, you know what, we have to deploy, we have to back up all these desktops because everything's kind of all over the place. And I think we have, I don't even know how many we have, but our count has gone way up on the backing up the local computers, which we never used to do. It was always, you always put everything went on the server. You disable that. You disable the user from saving. Now these users are traveling. They're not home. They're remote. They're working from home. They need the ability to either dump something in the cloud or work locally. But we have to protect that, not only the security of that computer, but the backup of it as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I think that was all I had.
That was good.
It's, common sense too. I mean, it comes back to, just if something is a little off or fishy, then reach out to your IT company. We get emails all the time. Is this legit? Is this something that And more times than not, it's not legit. They'll send something like, "Is this legit?" And I'm like, "Well, do you know this person?" They're like, "No." I'm like, "Well, doesn't that answer your question?" If they're sending you something that they say is encrypted and you don't know who that is or the company it's from and you weren't expecting it, those are the three things we tell them. Do you know the person? Do you know the company? And were you expecting anything from them? Like those three things. If you say no to all three, you could probably just safely delete it. If it's important enough, they'll send it again, and then you can follow up with it. So,
well, of course, if it's actually a scammer, he's going to send it a whole bunch of times too.
Yeah. To everybody. I got an email. We have great perimeter filtering just to show you. We use what we sell. We use in house. I got an email from me. It came to my inbox. It looked like it came from me, and it was one of my employees saying that he needed to change his ACH deposit to call him and get the new information. And
that's where you send the information back that says, "Okay, for $500, we'll change that."
Exactly.
Please send me to my PayPal account.
Exactly. Unbelievable.
I actually filed for unemployment about 2 years ago.
Did you?
And I called the Department of Labor, and I had to fill out some stuff. And then I got another letter a little while back not a little while back, but after that, where, they wanted to go to court. I'm like, okay, that'll be fun.
Oh my God. Crazy.
I can't even file for unemployment
as
the owner of the business. Come on, people.
Oh God. All right. Well, let's end on that.
Okay.
We'll see you guys next week at 1:30 Eastern.
Have a good day.
All right, Dave. See ya.